Hi everybody, I think we're ready. We've got a last few people coming in, but I'll start doing basic introductions. My name's Seamus Byrne. I work for CNET, the technology news website. We are a sister site of GameSpot, which is looking after this room this year. And we have a genuinely awesome panel of people here today. I think the audience turnout looks fantastic. I think it is definitely a topic a lot of people really care a lot about. I think there's so many of us who wish we were making games, but we know that we have no talent for drawing things, or we know that we really can't get our head around the code side of stuff. But thankfully, I think making games is about so much more than those two specific things. I'm sure if you know how to do those things, you could probably go and make a game yourself, and that's great. But if you don't, there are many, many other jobs in the industry these days. And thankfully, we have an amazing panel of people here today who are going to be able to help us understand just how much more there is in this business than just doing coding and drawing. So to introduce the panel, we have, I'll introduce everybody and then we'll give them all a massive round of applause at the end. First we have Georgia Van Kuylenberg. She is a voice actress. You may know her voice from games such as Final Fantasy 13. We have Corey May, who is a narrative director, works for Certain Affinity and has previously worked on titles like the Assassin's Creed series. We have Mick Gordon, a composer who notably has worked on the Doom games, and Sebastian Mitton, who actually can draw, I'm guessing, because he is an art director, but he's going to help us piece together how all these other things fit into the overarching world of making games. And he is the art director for Arcane Studios, the people behind that lovely little Dishonored trailer we saw there before, and of course many other really cool games coming up soon. So please thank our panel. So I thought a good place to start and a way to give everyone a little moment to kind of explain a little bit about themselves and their background. We'll try to give it the elevator pitch version so we don't spend the whole time on it, but quickly just describe individual skill sets and what it is that you do to help people make games. We'll start with you, Georgia.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So cool to be here. So for me, I guess it started with voices, as you were saying. So very fortunate to fall into some pretty great roles. And so for me, it's always been about the characters and about the sort of front-facing side of video games. Now being part of a few franchises, Star Wars and working with Blizzard, and now taking a Starbreeze game, and actually, I don't know if anyone here is a Payday fan, but we're doing a lot of stuff with Payday. So what has happened is I started in voices and now work with Starbreeze a lot on the marketing and PR side. So that's something else I can talk about in the VR world, VR world. I should buy that, prvr.com. It's probably gone.
Someone will go to the room right now.
I'm pretty sure that's done. But yeah, so I've been able to explore the side of video games that you guys often see once you've been playing the games, the conventions, the community managing, the PR, the advertising, the marketing. So definitely if that's something anyone has questions about, I can answer that as well as the voiceover stuff.
Corey.
All right. So I feel like my trajectory has been opposite of a lot of people. I started out working in film and chose to throw it all away to go into games because I love and prefer games. And then I get angry when I see people working in games that want to go on and do other stuff, because why would you want to do anything other than make games? I've worked now 12, 13 years, primarily involved in writing, narrative direction, that sort of stuff. So I spend most of my days being told that I'm really bad at what I'm doing and everyone else on the team can do it 10 times better, so why am I there and getting paid? And then I go home and drink, and so that's pretty much my job. That's what I do every day, is get insulted and then drink. So.
Sounds fascinating.
Right?
Something.
You want to work in his job.
We'll unpack these issues shortly. Mick?
Yeah, so I come at the game industry from an audio perspective. And audio in video games to me is fascinating because audio bridges the gap between the virtual and the reality. The game itself does not exist. It is a series of polygons, textures, art stuff. It's all code. It just sits there, right? None of it is real. But what happens is you take a model of a character, and that character has a walking animation, and we go and record a real sound effect of somebody walking. That's a real thing. So that sound being tied with that animation makes that come to life. It gives it some sort of sense of authority, I guess. And that's what's kind of always drawn me to video games, for sure.
Cool. Sebastian?
Well, so I've started in the video games in '99 on V-Rally 2 on Dreamcast. I did a fine art school, so that's what drives me every day on creating worlds at Arkane Studio. I've been there for 12 years now, and I spend my time like trying to get the artists better, looking at super cool ref, trying to hire the best talent in the world based on their specialties, right? And that's how we create world at Arkane Studio.
Cool. Now, Sebastian, I thought it might be good to start with you on a little bit of a question around how all these other roles that aren't the art itself or the coding itself, how that all feeds together to help create that, I guess, vision for a game. When you're setting, I guess, the tone, the vibe, all those things, I guess, all these different roles have to come together and build that. As an art director, how do you see that whole big picture fitting together?
Yeah, so that's true that at Arkane, I'm the art director, but I'm really close to the creative director, Harvey Smith. And we work together on pitching ideas. First, we try to set the pillars of our games, and then we'll follow this all along the production of the game. We try to focus on certain filters, otherwise you go too wide and it becomes something really weird. It's a giant beast to do a game during 4 years. I think you can say the same. You can get mad, so if you don't have filters and pillars, you can waste times and money. So, well, yeah, we have, how it's set up at Arkane is that I try to hire specialists, so that means architect, lighter. It's like in the movie industry. When I started, people were talking about softwares, polygons, textures, and that was not talking to me because I was an artist, five years of fine art schools, and I felt that it was not my place. And when I came back, I proposed to Rafael Contonio to focus on this, as he was focusing on gameplay experience or music. And that's how we raised every department at Arkane at the same level. There's no department that is above or, we are all equal, and we work in an agile process. So everyone at Arkane has a voice. We hear everyone, and we try to focus and create games that are really fun for the players in the end.
Cool. Now, Corey, we might come back to you and get you a couch if we need to shortly to work this through. But I think, when we think about the question of being, a narrative director and that sort of experience within more than just writing the words that everybody's going to say, right? This is kind of a very significant part of building out gameplay.
So,
so if you could, I guess, talk to that sort of whole,
Sure.
That whole idea of how important that whole idea of, I guess, building out narrative and how it means more than just the words.
So I think that a lot of times the assumption is that writing, narrative direction, narrative design is focused a lot on the written word, the script, and I actually think that's a really small part of it. And I think that, as you were saying, all of the departments, and I've always encouraged this on all the projects I work on, is that everyone is part of the narrative team, right? So sure, there may be writers writing, but the designers that are designing, the artists that are drawing, even the programmers that are coding, everyone is helping to tell the story. And for me, just like you said, the idea of all departments being equal is really important. And I think the idea of encouraging as much collaboration between the departments is really critical as well. Letting people have a voice in the different disciplines. Obviously, there's a sort of balancing act between allowing for feedback and maintaining a vision, and that's like a dance that you do every day, right? Trying to ensure that you stick to the vision of the project, manage those constraints, because if you bring those down, if you don't have walls, then people can go in a million different directions, and 90% of those 4 years are going to get flushed down the toilet of everyone arguing over what the best direction to take the project into is. So it's a dance between holding a vision and then finding ways to make sure that everyone can contribute to that vision. And writing is only a very tiny part of it, even though I think everything we do, whatever department you're working in, is a form of storytelling, because we're making entertainment first and software like ninth. There's a whole bunch of stuff in between.
Yeah, Mick, something that, and it's just something I've seen here at the show, which I think is a perfect example, actually, of all this, that, sometimes we might actually assume that, and it feeds off what the other guys were just saying now, that, we should never assume that the coders and artists are actually, the end-all be-all. Obviously, if there's no code, there's no game. But apart from that, there's a VR game down on the floor right now called Blind, where there are no graphics because you are literally blind inside the VR helmet, and therefore it's a game entirely about the sound environment and how you move through it. Clearly, sort of that whole thing about audio is in some way, it can be the entire game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really quite interesting. One of the projects I worked on recently was a game called Killer Instinct, right? It was an older game from the 90s that we kind of brought back with Microsoft. Cheers. And so, yeah, what was really fascinating about working on Killer Instinct, right, it was a fighting game, yeah? So it's very, very, very quick. It's very fast, very snappy, snap, snap, snap. And after the game came out for a while, we started getting some emails from this guy, and he was like telling us how much of a great Killer Instinct player he was and how much he really loved the game and all that sort of thing. And he was like, hey, can I play you guys sometime? We were like, yeah, sure, man, no worries, whatever. So we set up a match with this guy, and we kept playing, and he just kept beating us, like everything. And I mean, we'd been living with the game for about 4 years, so we were pretty good, right? And he just kept beating us and beating us and beating us and beating us and beating us. We didn't get up on him once, right? And we were chatting to the guy afterwards, and he's like, yeah, I've been playing fighting games for about 12 years or so. I've had to relearn a whole bunch of things after I was born blind. And I was like, what? We got beat like just non-stop by this blind player. And what was really interesting about that is that Jed, the sound designer on the project, carefully crafted the sounds so you could understand what was happening within the game without any visual cues. There's a very important thing for the reason is that instinctively humans react to a sound first and then the visual second. That's why whenever you hear a loud bang or whatever, you freak out first and then you see, oh, it's nothing, it's just something falling over or whatever, right? So Jeb was very well aware of that, and he'd crafted the sound in the game to reflect that. And it worked, and this guy was a great Killer Instinct player, even though he could not see.
That's amazing.
Killer Instinct?
Okay. Because my brother-in-law is at the origin of another game like this. It's called Blind Legend. So my brother-in-law is blind, and someone noticed that he was texting, doing stuff on his iPhone, and people were like, is it fake or is it a real iPhone? And it triggered the idea to do a game like this, so it's on the Apple Store. And you move like this, just with the sound, no visual, so that answers also the same question about can't code, can't draw. I think it's a good example.
Yeah, that's amazing. So look, I think something that helps us, I guess, get into the idea of how you find a path into this kind of an industry where you aren't just going through one of those very obvious sort of doors. I mean, sort of Georgia, how do you find at the very start that you are able to kind of demonstrate what you're capable of giving to a games company that exists outside of just the standard engineering and art departments?
Well, I think now the answer is shifting a lot because of the community that's building around games with all of the streaming and people creating their own, indie stuff is popping up the way it wasn't before. I think there's so many different answers. I think 5 years ago, if you'd asked me, I'd be like, well, if you're doing voices, you need an agent, then you need and it's just not like that anymore. Especially, I was thinking when you guys were sharing, it brought to mind, the roles of things like QA and things like that, which purely all you really need is a passion for games and an understanding for some of the technical side and some of the mechanics. So pretty much anyone in here has a role that they could play in video games purely by being passionate about the industry. And I think that that's something that's so special and super cool when you work for a company that gives everyone an equal voice, because then you come in with a passion and you get to work with people that have the coding experience. And I've seen it in the offices where they start to learn some of the other side, and it is a sharing of experience. But if you talk about voices, I guess I had my eyes open recently a lot when I went to TwitchCon and saw that there's so many new ways for voice actors to come in. But it really is now a thing where you can go online and create your own, dubbing of a lot of games, and that can be your in. When I started, it was all auditions, and it was all, that one script that came, and I was so fortunate, a funny Australian story, that the first role that I got was the big one, which was Vanille in Final Fantasy, and I went in, and my agent was like, this is ridiculous, you're going to get this. Because I live in America, and they need an Australian, slightly American voice, early 20s, believes in sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops, which I do, and has this dark past. And I've had a really spotted past of challenges in my life. So it was kind of like, we read this. I read for the role. He handed it in. Sorry, I'm taking up so much time on the story. He handed it in to the producers and said, and just put mine in. Now, for some perspective, in LA, when a role comes out, usually 200, 300 girls get submitted at least. And you've got to really hope that they're paying attention when your voice comes across. But my agent usually submits about 20 people for a role, and he only submitted me. And the guy called back and said, where's all your other girls? And he said, no, I'm not going to submit, because she'll get it. And he was like, he's like, Ilko, that's super arrogant. Don't do that. Where's your other girls? And he said, no, really, she's going to get it. And he said, I'll never work with you again if you do this. And he said, okay, fine, but she's going to get it, so we're working together. And I didn't know this until a year ago. But then, like 2 weeks later, Joe, the producer, called back. He's like, fuck you, Ilko. She got it. But it is that thing of sometimes, those years back, you were just made for certain things, and there are certain roles. But now, just long story short, you can really get into a lot of the creative side, the voicing, by going on Twitch and revoicing and doing playthroughs. So it's really opened up. I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but it really, from my side of things, I mean, you can be a community manager if you're passionate. You can be in the PR and marketing department. When I go to these conventions and I work with all the different, booth organizers and all of that sort of thing, they're all just people that love games, and like we all do. And it's an incredible, I don't think there's any industry out there that's like that basically a passion can take you to any role you really want if you're willing to put in the time, which we all kind of are.
I did actually just recently hear Ben Brode, the game director for Hearthstone over at Blizzard, that he actually got his first job at Blizzard because he used to deliver pizzas to the overnight QA team, and then they just realized, I love games too, guys. Hey, and managed to get a job in the QA team, and it all kind of went from there. So definitely paths like that, yeah, it's amazing where they can lead. Yeah, I mean, Corey, when it comes to writing, this is kind of probably one of those areas where, again, like you said sort of earlier, that everybody thinks we could probably just write these words and do these kinds of things. Where is the in for being a writer?
I think that if you talk to most people that write for games, they're all going to have radically different, totally crazy, insane stories. So I don't know, right? And that's always been my answer is, I have no idea how you do it.
Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, I'm being honest. I think that there are more tools available these days for it. So whether it's making stuff on Twine or with RPG Maker, or if there are still modding scenes out there, I wouldn't know because I'm old and broken. It's also about coming to things like PAX maybe and other conferences and meeting developers and making an impression. And he'll probably kill me, but I'll sort of tell the story anyway. This is being streamed, isn't it? There's a guy that used to work at Ubisoft. He doesn't there anymore. He's a very talented writer, amazing. This guy, Jeffrey. And he started out, I think the first time I ever met him was at an E3, and he wasn't working at Ubisoft at the time. And he just came up to a bunch of us that were drinking at the I forget which hotel it is. It's the one that looks like it's from the 70s. And was just super passionate and super excited. And it got everyone interested in his stuff to take a look, and that was how he did it. I'm always wary of telling that story because now it's am I giving people license to just, but you know what, fuck it, do it, right? It's like she was saying, if you're passionate about something, if it's all you care about, do whatever you can within the law, right? Yes. Don't break the law. but do whatever you need to do, and just do a lot of it. The very first job I ever had in games, I got because I was running a guild in an online game called Neverwinter Nights, and I'm not talking about the one that probably most of you know about. This was like some crazy shit on America Online that cost like $10 an hour to play. Yeah. So I was running a guild, and one day this guy sends me an email, and he's like, "Hey, I'm starting this company up in San Francisco called the Total Entertainment Network, and we're gonna be like hosting a lot of multiplayer lobbies. Like it used to be very different back. I feel so old." And they had the Dark Sun license from TSR back then. I don't think that even, Jesus. And so he's like, "You've been a really good guild master, and you run these like weird events on the weekend, and so like come work for me." And so it was just like being passionate, playing games. It worked out. This story I really shouldn't tell, and I'll do it really quickly. When World of Warcraft first came out, I was playing a bunch with people, and it turned out that some of the people that I was running 5-mans with worked at EA. And I wound up getting a job doing some work there. Again, just because my whole life was all about, I don't know, creating characters, telling stories, being a disaster. And so, yeah, I don't think I did a good job answering your question. I'm sorry. just be yourselves, and as much as possible, be passionate and again, aggressive within reason. If you're anything like me, it helps to have a couple of drinks, because if I haven't, then I definitely can't do those things. All right.
I'm kind of wondering if an important part of that story, and then I think this might feed into something maybe sort of the others can sort of bounce off, but I guess having that kind of being bold enough to go and try to grab an opportunity, but then what does that person need when maybe someone does turn around and buy it and kind of go, well, all right then, like, what have you got? That you probably need something up your sleeve or something kind of there to actually know that you've got a little bit more to back that up?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if you're writing, you'll have writing samples. And I know that at least when I was working at Ubisoft, for example, looking for people, they would say, "Oh, well, what do you want me to send you on game scripts?" And for me, it was, no, I don't give a shit like what the format is. Like, send me whatever best represents your voice. An amazing woman that I hired back in the day sent me a bunch of like very erotic short stories. And that has nothing to do with video games, but the writing was amazing, and I hired her instantly, and she's still working there to this day. I can't say on what, sadly, but she's incredible. And so Liz, on the off chance you're like out there watching this, like, I love you. She was the first person that I got to hire through our internship program. And so no one that we hired through that program actually ever submitted anything that resembled a video game script. It was short stories, it was like diary entries, it was analytical like breakdowns of like pieces of literature. Like, I didn't care, right? Like, have a voice, make sure the voice is really distinct, and hope that you're not sending it to someone that's not as awesome and open-minded as I am, right? So, but you're right, Seamus. Absolutely. The first question out of my mouth all the time is like, send me some writing samples, and it can be anything. It can be anything. So don't worry too much about what the shape is, so much as you worry about does it best express you and your voice, because that's what I respond to, at least.
So yeah, Mick, I guess again, in the audio space, people could certainly be just messing around and doing stuff. Then how do you try to get someone to notice that?
Yeah, it's actually jumping off the back of what Corey said, and that as well, is that Corey's story there about the erotic writing and all that sort of stuff. No, I mean, seriously, like, the moral of that story to me is stand out. Stand out, be different. If Corey had gotten 200 submissions of erotic writing, it would be the non-erotic writing that stood out that day, right? Or you would have had 199 employees. But yeah, so, the point is really stand out and be different. What I find these days with the game industry is that it's really competitive. And what I mean by that is that the industry itself is competitive within itself. So everybody is working on a big game. They're all pouring lots and lots of money behind it, and everybody's trying to have something that's different, that separates them from the rest of the games that are coming out, right? So what they'll do to separate themselves is they'll do anything they can. They'll do sort of all different sort of marketing things. They'll hire different people to work on it. They'll, work with all sorts of different script scriptwriters and things, or they'll approach people from movies, or they'll do whatever it can be. And all in a sort of effect to try and get their game to stand out amongst everything else. So that sort of point about being unique, finding that thing that you do that's unique, that's different to everybody else. Now, of course, that's a difficult thing to give for advice, because I can't tell each and every one of you what your unique thing is. That's something that you've got to find on your own, and it's really not something you find straight away. I don't know, everybody's different, I guess, but for me, like, it took a long time before I even started looking at music and sound as something that I maybe somewhat knew a little bit about, you know. It's like, I think you learn through kind of copying others and things like that too. If you want to learn to be a writer, you rewrite novels and stuff, right? If you want to learn to be, you know, a sound designer or whatever, you learn to make the Jurassic Park T-Rex sound or whatever. So yeah, but anyway, the moral of that is really kind of stand out. Find out what that thing is that you do that's unique that nobody else does.
Sebastian, this might sort of, be a nice way to feed into that question that Corey brought up about just networking as well. Is, I mean, with a studio like Arcane, are there many people who, have similar stories of, oh, remember that time we met at that bar and then we started talking and then we ended up working together? Is that a genuine critical way, or a way for people to stand out and get noticed?
Yeah, it happens sometimes that you meet like a trainee, for example. They knock at the door. We have lots of trainees who tries to enter Arcane because we are non-studio now, and they like the experience we provide to players. And some of our trainees are now lead artists, lead vehicle design, for example. And what I tell them in general is look into your own story. If you want to be different from other people, just look at you, because in general they want to copy things. What I see as an artist on forum is that they all copy themselves. So you see, you can read the pattern of 2016 is about fantasy characters. 2017 will be like vehicle design on the moon, for example. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, try to be yourself and you'll be unique, because we are all unique. So just look at you in the mirror and try to bring something. If you have the skills for, writing, drawing, coding, try to do it the way you think is the best for you and for other people, because then it comes to a teamwork. So that's true that when they reach a studio, they are used to work alone. And it's quite different when it starts to just to crunch with other people, to work with the QA, to get the pizza from this guy previously. That's what I tell them. And from my experience, that's what happened to me. I looked into my past, but when I was super young. So that's what I say during the promotion of Dishonored 2. I show a big scissor that is now a weapon for a gang. And it comes from my grandmother. She was a tailor. His brother was a dressmaker. And from that, I learned a lot. But I realized that, like 7 years ago, that it was so important to craft things this way for our games. And crafting game or crafting objects, this is the same. So that's the flavor I try to bring into our games. Make things that look real, tailored for the player.
That's really cool.
I don't really answer your question, but
I think that's actually a great point. That it's like if a story like that from anybody's background, that could feed into writing, it could feed into art, it could feed into sort of any other aspect. There's one word I wanted to pick on for a minute in the way people can talk about, and the word's been used a couple of times, but I think when people, I guess passion. That's the big thing that people often sort of say, be passionate. And I'm sure in people's pitches and things, they'll often write, I'm really passionate about stuff. So I feel like it's almost an abused word, but, how important, well, we've kind of said that the desire to be in the industry itself is really good, but, what are kind of other ideas you can come up with, maybe, Georgia, like how to kind of demonstrate you have passion rather than just saying the word, I have passion?
Yeah, I was going to actually, on the networking thing, it kind of actually connects. I hate that word, networking. I believe in making friends. It's kind of a different angle. But it really is something that for everyone in this room, if you're sort of feeling I want to get in and I don't know how, the most important thing, I believe, is longevity. Like actually saying, look, I might meet this person today at PAX. Like you might go downstairs and meet someone who's a level designer on some game and you want to work on that game. it doesn't mean they're going to hire you next week, but don't give up. Because if you keep having that integrity of communication over the next few years, I really love this game, I saw that you just released this, or I like the new DLC on this game, or whatever it is that you can demonstrate that you really, it's not that you're just passionate like everybody else that says they're passionate, but you really know the game, and then in 3 years' time when they need to hire somebody, they're going to think of you. So I think that's something other than passion, really show your dedication to the industry over a long time, and also for your own sake. Don't get down on yourself if you come to an event or you start reaching out to people because you came to this and you're super excited and you start going on LinkedIn and writing to everyone and no one hires you in the next 3 weeks. This can take a really long time, and it's worth it because it's what you love, and if you are passionate, like you said in your LinkedIn message to them, it doesn't matter and it will pay off. So I think to be easier on yourself and know that it will take a long time sometimes. Maybe you will get hired next week and awesome. But it's worth really keeping up those friendships, because I've got these friends that I started with in the industry in 2008 that now are some of my closest friends because we both just continue to touch in on this game or that. I love this, and I love that. And people move around. People move to different companies, and you just never know what opportunities are going to come up with a game that you want to be on.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that kind of networking point? Now we're gonna open up the microphones to questions shortly. I feel like there's probably going to be quite a few questions, so don't be too shy, or otherwise you might run out of time at the end. You're warned now. There's microphones on both sides, so we'll sort of do the queue thing. I feel like that's probably fairest. But anybody else? I mean, the things that come to mind is I see more and more like dev nights at bars and game jams and all these. Like, are these good for, I guess, trying to both, offer your skills that it might be a little left of center as well as just meeting people?
I think it's all good. I mean, yeah, for sure. I think anything you can do, really.
Yeah.
I mean, what's really fascinating is, like, you and I, we were talking before about, like, networking, as Georgia said, not networking, making friends, which is such a good point to bring up, right? Really good point to bring up. But it's important that it's always happening. You're always chatting to people. You're always meeting new people. It never really stops. And these days, with like the explosion of the internet from 12 years ago, 13 years ago, or whatever, when we would kick around ideas about games and stuff, it was a lot more difficult then. You actually had to travel to places and visit people and things. Whereas nowadays, I mean, you can hit people up on Twitter. I get jobs through Facebook. It's weird. I get like Facebook messages and things and land projects and stuff that way. It's really weird. So it's something that never stops. Just to quickly pick up on that passion point too, like I had passion explained to me once. There's a really interesting way that's worth kind of pointing out as well. Passion isn't a whole bunch of exclamation points in an email. That's not passion, right? That's bullshit. Passion is you're 6 months into crunch and you've been awake for 4 days and you hate everything and you still have to find something within yourself to get the job done. And that's when you go, yep, that's the passion bit of it there. All the other stuff is just enthusiasm. It's just interest. It's just excitement, To me, that passion thing, that's the thing that comes in the end. The passion I always describe as like the thing that you do anyway, even if you didn't want to be doing it. Even if there was no money involved, even if you weren't even required to do it for any reason, you'd still be doing it anyway. That's the kind of the passion thing, I guess.
And look, I mean, that's a good point. I sort of just know from like journalism sort of side of things, but I think more open to everybody there that when you do throw something back at someone to say, well, what have you done? If they say, I'm waiting for my first paid job, again, not to say go and do free work for people, but more that you can do work in your own time for yourself to then demonstrate something.
Yeah, I was just going to say really quickly, like, don't do free work for people. You can do free work for yourself, but I know that I would be I'm one of those people that's like, if someone's, I'll trade you exposure for work. It's really hard, though, because I get that for so much of at least the start of my career, when I was working in film, everything was done on spec, right, which was for free. But it was for myself, right? I would not work on something for someone else, to enrich someone else. It had to be a project I cared about that I was working on for myself. And I just really quickly, just hearing about, hearing the word passion, I think that the two things to keep in mind are both sincerity and positivity. I don't know why I wrote those words down, but I think that when you're passionately shitting on stuff and critical of stuff, it's so easy. It is so easy. Like, it is so easy to tell me why, like, everything is bad and broken and doesn't work. It's much more interesting for you to tell me why something that most people see as bad and broken is actually really interesting or has something that is potentially useful down the road. I like to say, and I will not tell you what they are, in the past 20 years, there are only 2 games that I did not like. And let's be clear, I didn't say that are bad, just games that I didn't like. So again, at least for me, it's even true for like film and television for the most part. I love everything. So maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's why like my stuff is bad. But like I like a lot of stuff, and yeah. So that's all. Be positive if you can, please.
Are there any first questions to hit the microphones? I imagine somebody wants to know things. So yeah, the queues on the 2 sides of the room, left and right side. Cool, go for it. And yeah, please make sure and use the microphone so that the viewers at home can also hear you.
Cool.
Yep, on the left, I think they'll turn up the microphone in a moment. So
Okay.
Yep, there you go, you're up.
Check, please. Anyway, this one is for Georgia, because I am an aspiring voice actress. And I was just wondering, like, do you constantly rehearse or play with your voices on a daily basis? How do you make sure you continue to have such a structured voice, especially if you're doing multiple projects back to back?
Very good question, because it is one of those things where you would assume that what you have to do is work on it and like practice every day, which is important, of course, to know what your capabilities are. But I think you're so fortunate that if you want to be a voice actor, that's something you can do in your daily conversation. And if you integrate it into who you are, it becomes a lot easier when you're required to do it in a room by yourself with this in front of you. So I've learnt the best way to do it is to get so comfortable with putting on a voice in the most random of moments that like everybody that knows me is like, you never talk with the same voice for every sentence, because I'll be like, oh my God, it's like super crazy out here. And then the next one I'm like, I don't like this at all. And it's just, that's my normal conversation. And it might annoy everybody I know. But the point is that it gets you at a level of comfortability that is so important. And for this is not just for voice acting, for every single person in here, the most important thing about this whole panel is self-belief. Knowing that you actually have the capability to do the thing that you want to do. And for voice acting, that's something that can come up even more because you're required to perform in front of people or nobody, but you know it's going to millions of people later. And it is this thing of just getting comfortable being ridiculous. Yep. That is the first thing. Like, spend as much time as you need to, whether it's in front of people because that makes you more nervous, or by yourself because that makes you more nervous. Whatever you need to do to be comfortable with any random weird sound. And then also just like watch things, listen to things, and put voices to it. It's the best way to do it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, hit the right side, stage right. Oh yeah, I think it's up now.
Is it up? Okay. Sorry. So for narrative design, you start, like at the beginning of the project, you've got a lot of work and you're doing things, and you've got like planning and all that, and at the end the ship is burning and you've got like 3 scenes cut and you're desperately trying to tie it all together. What are you doing in the middle?
No, the ship is always burning. The ship is burning before it leaves port, so I wish it was as simple as you describe. As soon as stuff starts being built, there's a problem, or something has to change. So it is iteration and responding to changes pretty much from go. Like I said, I wish it was as simple as you are describing, because that would be more manageable, but as long as stuff is being built, stuff is changing, and ideally you are aware as stuff is changing so that you can alter your stuff when necessary, or fight back and tell people that they need to burn in hell when they're making bad decisions. So it is a constant discussion over the course of production, which will occasionally escalate into arguments, but hopefully you love the people that you're working with, and so those fights are all in good fun. So yeah, you're going from day one, and it continues until ship, and then a little bit after, when people are telling you about all the things you did wrong and the plot holes that are here and there, and you want to tell them that it's actually not your fault, but you can't for legal reasons, so you have to just sort of like sit on it and apologize and or not respond. So yeah, I hope that sort of answered your question.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Over here on the left.
Hey, this one was sort of for Georgia, but maybe for everyone. If you hadn't noticed, we live in Australia. It's kind of isolated. Just sort of wondering, with sort of the industry moving along, if it's sort of being more people able to work from home or work off-site, or sort of doing their work more based in the cloud, whether that's something that you're seeing happening more within the industry, or if there's the expectation that you might want to move somewhere where the bigger game studios are, if that's where you want to end up.
Another very relevant and good question, because it is amazing how quickly that's changing. I don't know if you guys have experienced it too, but 5-10 years ago, you absolutely had to be in the place that the work was. And now you can set up your own studio in your closet and record, as I have, and you can just submit for things all the time. There is a expectation that you're quite often able to go in. Some of the best things you can do is be in the location that you need to be, like moving, say, being in LA for 6 months, getting to know people, and then being remote once you've sort of done a few jobs. But as far as all the other jobs go, when I do everything I do for Starbreeze, I work from home. I turn up at PAX, I turn up at Comic-Con, I turn up, all that kind of thing, but I don't have an office with them. So it's becoming more and more with technology. We have sound designers and all sorts of things, that colorists that work off-site, because you don't need to be there, and you can put your Skype screen up and talk to them the same way that you would, really, other than you can't see their legs. But if you need to see legs, you're a leg person, Skype full body.
They're really wearing pants.
Yeah, exactly. Preferably put your pants on before you do. Because it really is what I love about our industry, is it's so, like you said, you can get jobs on Twitter and Facebook the same way that you can do the work remotely. So with voices, I think there's still a lot of allure around having people in the studio for the bigger things. But for the smaller things that will get you that experience of smaller paid work, you can do that from home. There's a lot of technical stuff that you need to look in, so just use the Google machine to find out what you actually need to keep it to, industry standard, but I highly recommend starting that way.
Cool. Thank you very much.
On that question, Sebastian, like as an art department, or in that overarching sense, are there many people who work remotely in a studio like Arcane these days?
So when I started, it was like the indie developer nowadays. You were working mainly with friends, but as the studio is now bigger, you need to to get talents from everywhere in the world. And I tend to have people on board, because I think it's better to have like a direct contact with people. But that happens that we work with some people abroad, like we have Piotr in Romania, we have people in New York. But we have direct connection, we have Polycom set up, it's big camera, so we are connected and we are in touch. And we have 2 studios, so one in Austin, one in Lyon, and we are in touch every day, we connect. But that's important to feel people and to face them. Otherwise, they are just a name in a mail, and you get lost of things. And yeah.
Oh, yeah, any thoughts from you, Corey? We've got a very keen request for your thoughts.
Sure. And again, this is just my opinion. I'll be very clear about that. I am a big believer that the best work is done when people are together and occupy the same physical space. So just so you know, my dream is that people like you would be in the office with us, so that I could write some garbage down and bring it to you, and we could record it like then and there, and like be able to iterate in the ways that artists and designers a lot of times get to do, but that narrative rarely does, which is the whole separate thing for another day. So it's not to say it's impossible, right? And a lot of places have done it, and they've done it very successfully, and I think that it's absolutely possible. My preference, though, for whatever reason, maybe because I'm old, is human contact and the ability to do the work, but then also, ideally, go out to lunch and dinner and drinks and hang out on the weekend, because for whatever reason, I'm the crazy person that also loves this idea. I have this idealistic belief that the people on your team also become your best friends. Like, things are, at least they're most interesting when that's true, and I think it's harder if there is distance. And like I said, it's just my personal belief. It's not necessarily like the belief of anywhere I work, and there are plenty of places that have had tremendous success doing it remotely. But I think, like I keep saying, that the words on the page are only a part of it. It's also the person behind them, and I like to, like I said, occupy the same space as those people. So the very short answer is yes, it's possible, but I personally prefer when there's actual contact.
Cool. Over here.
Okay, so this question is for Corey. I have to say I love the original Neverwinter.
Like the actual one on America Online?
No,
see.
no, the original one back in BioWare days.
Yeah, that's not the original one.
Oh, sorry.
Unless you're talking about like, no, because even like Treasures and Gateway to Savage Frontier, like, or nope. So the original Neverwinter was this thing on America Online, and you paid by the hour, and it was sort of like a proto-MMO. So sorry, I didn't mean to I'm very passionate. We actually used to call it Neverwinter, like for old, because no one knows about it, but it's real. You can look it up. It was a gold box game. I'm so sorry to do this. Does the phrase gold box game mean anything to people in here? Jesus Christ, that's like not... Well, thank you for the people that raised your hands. Anyway, continue. I'm very sorry for getting angry.
So I've always been interested in writing, and the only thing I've really written is fanfics, which I've never published. So if I want to get out there and get people to, read my work, what would be the best way to do that?
Start by publishing those things, right? Like, isn't that how 50 Shades of Grey started? You guys can laugh, but like it's like a legitimate like vibe, and like I can guarantee you the person that wrote that is like laughing all the way to like a yacht. Yeah. So if you write stuff and you feel it like reflects you and you're excited about it, like get it out there. Now, like be prepared for some people to then tell you how terrible it is, like I do every day. But that's good practice too, right? For getting a real job where everyone at the office tells you how terrible you are at your job. So I would say just get it out there, like self-promote, right? Like you hopefully develop like a slightly tougher skin. I didn't, I just drink. But everyone has a different process. So I would say just do it, right? Do it, get it out there, put it out there. Hopefully someone will find it and love it, and at the very least, like you'll be able to say like I put something out into the world and people looked at it and read it. I don't know, just do it.
Why haven't you published yet?
Yeah.
I guess I've always been self-conscious.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So fuck it, man.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
Just go publish it after. Just go do it right now. You're not gonna die. You're not gonna die.
Thanks very much.
Over here on the left.
Hey there, guys. This question's also for Corey. I'm a big fan of stories in games. I like, obviously, even in games which use stories as kind of like just an excuse plot for the gameplay, I sort of look into all the narrative aspects of it. But it always fascinates me because I feel with a lot of writing in games, there's a lot of sacrifice made to accommodate the gameplay, to accommodate limitations of things like game engines, what people are actually trying to do with the gameplay. I know Shigeru Miyamoto once famously said he's shot down any attempt at trying to add more depth to Mario because he never wants it to be any more than just, focusing on the gameplay. The narrative doesn't have to be anything more than rescuing the princess. Like, what, from the perspective of the writer, what is, what sacrifices, are those sacrifices that have to be made, and do you feel that there are times when, do you think like gameplay of a story is just hard-coded, it has to be always that way, or do you think there are times when sacrificing story for gameplay can actually be detrimental to that experience?
So, this is like the whole separate talk. I guess there's a couple of different things I believe. I don't believe that it should be story versus gameplay, and if that's happening, then there's like a bigger problem that's going on. I think that as much as anytime you can say, oh, it's gameplay's fault for getting in my way, it's just as much my fault for not finding a solution. So I never want to play the victim, except to say, yeah, that I am. Yeah, so So there's no like black and white answer. Like normally if there's an issue, it means that like both sides haven't found a way to like come at it together to find a solution. I will continue to say in the hopes that one day it becomes true, like I keep saying, that everyone that's working on a game, like no matter what department they're working in, is part of the narrative team, right? So to say that there's a fight between gameplay and story means that like something's gone wrong on the team, because ideally the story it reflects and represents and supports the gameplay, and the gameplay reflects and represents and supports the narrative. Have I had to make sacrifices in the past? Like, yes, but is that the fault of other people or mine? Like, that's a much harder question, right? So my hope is that as I've gotten older and a little bit wiser and more experienced, I've tried to anticipate these things and sit down with people at the start of production and say, hey, how do we do this in a way that makes sense? So like everything else, there's no simple answer, but I would like, ideally, in the future for us to try and erase this idea that there is a inherent conflict. There shouldn't be one. We're all working to create the same thing together, and like some games don't need stories. I do think all games need context, though, right? So maybe we don't need cutscenes, but we at least need to understand like why we are somewhere and why we're doing the things we're doing.
Cool. Over here.
Okay, let me just preface this by saying, ever since I heard you start talking Georgia, I've heard bloody bulldozer and sit on my deck cloaker go through my mind non-stop.
Oh, that character of all characters.
I'm sorry, I just first got introduced to you playing Sydney. Anyway.
It's okay.
How do you guys get past this self-doubt? Like, you write something and think, oh, it's not really going to be that good, even though others will clearly tell you, dude, this is some of the best work you've ever done, you should put it out there, and you're thinking, no, I really shouldn't, this isn't the best work. I mean, how do you get past that stage?
Oh, that's a good one. It's a philosophical one and a whole talk in itself, self-belief in the world of video games. It's a lot of, gosh, I really want to like sit down with you and give you a cuddle and talk about it. For me, it really is taking that leap. I really feel that the first thing you have to do, like we just said to the gentleman before you, just do it. Like, that's the first step. There is a moment where you have to go, if I don't do this, I get nothing. I get questions of should I, what would have, could it have. If I do it and it feels scary as shit, and I'm wondering and I'm not sure, they might say they like it. And that's the first step. So to everybody, it really is, like I couldn't have cheered enough, like just do it. And it's the toughest thing. We all know that moment of leaping is the toughest part, but you get nothing if you don't. Just a lot of wishing that you had, maybe in years to come. So it's just know that you're going to feel weird, you're going to feel scared. Share it with people, and maybe as a more constructive piece of advice, have like your level of people that you're comfortable with sharing and work up. Start sharing, get some feedback. And the most important thing, honestly, is to be open to criticism as feedback and not negativity. Just let it be that no one starts perfect. Like the first time I did voices as Angelina Ballerina, you know, I'm sure there was a lot of things that weren't sounding English at all. And I need to know that so I can get better. And it's really putting your ego away as much as you can to not get hurt enough to keep going back in. So take the criticism as feedback. It's not negativity, it's helping you. So go to the people that can help you first and then work up to it. Or, just like I do sometimes, just go big.
All right, thanks for that.
Cool, I think we might manage to fit in 2 more questions. So here on the left.
Hello. Okay, so my question is directed at Mick, and I was just wondering about like being adaptable when it comes to like making audio, because obviously, like the music you're known for now with all the metal and the grunge and stuff, I'm assuming that's not what you always did. And I was wondering how adaptable you've had to be and how like important a part that is of being an audio guy.
Yeah, it's a really good question, man. Yeah, no, really good question. Obviously, it's very important. At the end of the day, it's all sound. It's all music. It's all the same thing. Whether it's some tribal thing, whether it's some choral thing, whether it's some heavy metal thing, whether it's some country thing, whatever, it's all music, right? It's all the same notes. So all music starts from the same point, is the fact that it's music, right? So at the start of every project, I try to destroy whatever we did previously. So whatever I just did on the previous project, that all gets destroyed. Mentally, I mean, that all just gets destroyed. Every habit, every process, every trick that we've figured out, that all gets destroyed, and we go straight back to the beginning. And that's it, and you just relearn for every single project, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
You do that by choice?
One more question.
Hi guys. First of all, really inspiring hearing you guys because for me, I'm a high school teacher. So I'm dealing with a generation of kids that are coming through at the moment that are very into gaming. They love it and it's a part of their daily life, and you know, for some of them, especially the ones that I come across with autism or some sort of disability, or they've got a behavioural issue, I am finding that it's a way of communication. Now the problem that I'm facing is that I'm also an English teacher. So it's directed at all of you, but particularly Corey. I am having a really stressful time, and I have been for about 2 years now, getting kids engaged in some sort of writing process, whether it be creative, analytical, or expository, or anything else, just to get them to flip and write. Now, besides giving them alcohol, because I can't... right? I really need some help because I'm at my wit's end and I'm going to start drinking, okay? So... mostly from Corey, but then can everyone else, because I've got kids who are interested in drama, music, they're creative, they're amazing kids, but I just can't get them to do something as basic as just put pen to paper at the moment. So what do I do?
Have you tried seeing about pen and paper games versus video games?
No.
Stuff like, you know, again, I'm old, so when I was young it was just Dungeons and Dragons, but pen and paper role-playing games will oftentimes encourage reading and writing both on the part of the dungeon master and the player. So maybe you could DM for your class and they could, you know, or you could start out that way and then ask them to do modules almost as assignments. I think that's one way. I don't know, I haven't used it that much. I don't know if there's a way to build assignments and ask them to use Twine, which is a very relatively straightforward, primarily text-based game tool. So again, which sort of lives or dies based on writing. So these are ways to potentially prompt them. So at least if you want to get them writing, those are two things off the top of my head that might work. Cool. Otherwise, my favorite thing to do, and this is like the drinking, so you probably don't want to encourage it, is I think a great way to practice the craft of writing is to encourage people to tell really interesting and elaborate, but very, you know, safe and I guess lying, right? You know, whether we used to try and go to whatchamacallit, like conventions at hotels and bluff our way in, or you call up your friends and see like how crazy a story you can tell them before they call you out. So those are my three pieces of advice, I guess.
Awesome.
Like
Thank
D&D,
you.
Twine, and lying.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for that, guys.
Yeah, I was just going to get sort of one last comment from everybody, actually, just on sort of that idea of how do you unlock that creativity, and then, you know, how do you, I guess, try to really harness it and find that way into the industry. Maybe start with Sebastian, but yeah, just those sort of two really kind of seed of that idea. How do you unlock that creativity, and then how do you find that path?
How did I...
Oh yeah, but I think as sort of advice, you know, yeah, what's your feeling on how someone should, you know, leave this room and go and find
start in the game industry?
Yeah.
First, trust trust yourself. As I said, look into your past, try to analyze yourself and find your way, because there are a lot of doors open in video games. Now it's not just, we don't say developers, we have a variety of jobs that are open in the gaming industry. And be very social, because this is teamwork. And what I see when people come from the school, they are really selfish. They walk into their garage and they are not used to work with a lot of people under budgets, with tight schedule. They don't know what crunch is. They know what pizza is, but not crunch. The real crunch, the weekend, the night. So yeah, try to open your mind to and have a good general culture, and that will help a lot. Keep your eyes wide open. Project you into the future, because when we start a game, for example, Dishonored 2, it was 4 years ago, and when you open the eyes again, when you finish the game, there are YouTubers everywhere, influencers, you know, the world is changing very fast. The VR is there. So yeah, stay tuned, look, you know, stay connected, and that should help.
Cool. Mick?
Yeah,
last thought?
just be open. Don't be judgmental and be really positive. So what I mean by don't be judgmental is even if you really hate something, if you don't like something, try and figure out why it doesn't work. But you can learn something from anything. Just be really, really open with absolutely everything.
Cool. Corey?
Yeah, I guess don't give up. I know it's hard to not give up, but don't give up. Keep at it. It may take a really long time and it may be really hard. Otherwise, become an accountant.
Or have a drink.
To sort of also answer your question as far as my belief, but also the final words in true me form, find a way to make a difference in the thing you're doing as well. So if you're having trouble getting kids to write, create a game that has a social responsibility element. How do you solve this problem? And I think that that's something that, for me, gaming is the most incredible way to attack social issues and really look at the bigger questions in a more fun way, which is a great way to get kids to really problematize things. But for all of you, if you can find a way to connect that passion, including the exclamation points, with what's going to help the world, you'll find the jobs, you'll find the purpose, and you'll be in complete flow that you'll wake up 3 years later and you will have created a game that you didn't even realize is helping the world or is bringing forward questions for kids and for us. So really, I would encourage you, if you want to stay relevant and if you want to do something of meaning, find a way that your game or your passion or the things that you're creating for free at home on the way to getting a job really contribute and answer some major questions that we're all asking.
Cool, what a great point to finish on. Please thank Georgia, Corey, Mick and Sebastian.